My name is Earl McKenna, and I have been hauling nets in the Atlantic for many, many years. I've seen things out there that would make a grown man question everything he thought was real. But this story, the one I'm about to tell you, that's the one that still keeps me awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I imagined it all or if the ocean really does have secrets that don't belong to us. It was late October of 1985, and I was working the waters off Cape Cod. The season had been good to me that year. My boat, the Margaret Ann, named after my late wife, was running smooth, and the catch had been steady. But on that particular morning, something felt different. I can't explain it the way a younger man might. All scientific-like, I can only tell you what I felt in my bones. The sun came up gray that day. Not the kind of gray that means rain is coming. I've seen enough storms in my time to know the difference. This was a different gray. It was the color of something holding its breath. The water was still, almost too still, like glass. And the gulls, they weren't screaming like they usually do, were quiet, circling high, watching something below. I'd been out on the water since 4 in the morning. Just me, the hum of the Margaret Ann was a good 40-footer, nothing fancy, but she was honest. She'd never let me down. That morning, I had my net spot I'm fishing for near 20 years. It was a shelf of rock about 80 feet down, where the cod liked to gather. I knew that place like I knew the lines on my own face. By noon, I hadn't caught much. Maybe a dozen good fish. Some smaller ones I threw back. Not unusual for that time of year, but something in my gut told me to stay. So I did. I reset my net, had some coffee from the thermos, and watched the horizon. The fog was starting to roll in from the northeast, just a thin veil at first, but I could see it coming. By evening, I'd be back in port. Around 2 o'clock, I felt it, not with my hands or my eyes, but with something deeper, a vibration in the water. It wasn't waves, the sea was still glass. It was something underneath, something moving. I've felt that feeling before, usually when a big school of fish is passing through, but this different. This was deliberate. This was something with intention. I started to pull in my nets. The first 2 came up easy, full of cod and a few haddock. Good catch for an afternoon's work. But the third net, the one I'd set furthest out, that one felt heavier than it should have been. Not the good kind of heavy, the kind that means you've struck gold with a full net of fish. This was different weight. It was slow and resistant, like something was holding it down. I worked the winch, hand over hand, taking my time. No need to rush. The ocean teaches you patience if you're smart enough to listen. But as that net came up through the water, I noticed something that made my chest tight. The lines were frayed, not worn down over time, frayed, like something had torn through them. When the net broke the surface, I saw it immediately. 3/4 of it was shredded. The mesh was ripped open in places, hanging down like torn cloth. And the strangest thing, there were marks on the remaining net, not from fish hooks or rocks. These were gouges, deep, deliberate gouges, as if something had clawed at it with purpose. I stood there, holding that damaged net, and for the first time in all my years on the water, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with October wind. Inside the torn section of the net, I found something else. Scales, not fish scales. I've handled plenty of them. These were different, larger, iridescent, catching the afternoon light like oil on water. Some were still slick, and when I touched one, it was warm, not room temperature warm. Warm like blood. I remember dropping that scale back into the water like it had burned me. The fog was rolling in thicker now, and the sun was starting its descent. I was alone out there, and the ocean was beginning to feel less like something I understood, and more like something watching me. I gathered up what was left of my net, secured them on deck, and started the engine to. As I was turning the Margaret Ann around, I saw something in the water behind me. Just a glimpse, just for a second, a shape, something dark and massive, moving beneath the surface 50 yards off my stern. It was there, and then it wasn't, gone as quick as a thought. I told myself it was a whale, Could have been a whale. I've seen whales out there plenty of times, but whales don't claw through fishing nets. Whales don't leave warm scales in the mesh. The fog swallowed the sea as I headed back, and by the time I reached the harbor in Provincetown, the world had turned into nothing but gray. I didn't tell anyone about the net that night. Not the harbor master, not my friend Tom, who helped me tie up the boat, and especially not my wife. Martha had spent enough years worried about me on the water. I wasn't about to give her more reasons to lose sleep. That night, I lay in bed and listened to the wind outside our little house, and I thought about those scales, warm scales, gouges in the net that looked almost intentional, and that shape in the water, massive and dark, moving with a kind of intelligence that made no sense. I told myself I was imagining. That's what we do when we're tired, when we've been alone too long with the sound of the engine and the rocking of. We see things that aren't there. But I knew better. And 3 days later, I was going back out there. 3 days, a long time when you're trying to think about something. I tried. Lord knows I tried. I spent that first day after the incident fixing nets, selling my catch at the market, doing all the ordinary things that make up. But every quiet moment, my mind went back to that torn net, those warm scales, that shape in the. Martha noticed. She always did. She'd lived with me long enough to know when something was eating at. On the second day, she asked if I was feeling sick. I told her I was fine, just tired. It wasn't entirely a lie. I hadn't slept well. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on the water, that fog rolling in, mass shape moving beneath the surface. Second night, I made a decision. I was going back out there. Not the next morning. I wasn't foolish enough to return so soon, to look desperate or crazy. But 3 days after finding the torn net, I'd go back to that same spot. I'd set my nets again, and I'd see if anything else happened. Maybe I'd find an explanation. Maybe I'd find nothing at all, and I could finally put this thing to rest. The morning of the third day came cold and clear, not like the first time. Sky was sharp blue, the sun bright and honest, the kind of morning that makes you feel foolish for being scared. I told Martha I was going out for a full day's work, restocking after the poor catch from earlier in the week. She made me a thermos of coffee and packed me some sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. She kissed me on the cheek and told me to be careful. She always did. I was careful, or at least I thought I was. The Margaret Ann cut through the water, smooth as silk that morning. The ocean had a different mood than it had 3 days before. It wasn't watching me anymore, or maybe it was, but it was doing it different, not with suspicion, but with something closer to invitation. The water was darker than usual, deep blue-green instead of the lighter blue of autumn, and there were no gulls. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. By 10 o'clock, I was back. I cut the engine and let the boat drift. The water was calm, almost glassy again, but this time it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something was holding its breath, waiting. I set out my nets carefully. New nets, not the ones that had been torn. I wasn't taking any chances with damaged equipment. The mesh went into the water smooth and easy, and I settled in to wait. I had the radio on low, some station out of Boston playing music and talking up the red side. Normal sound, normal life, but nothing felt normal. For about 2 hours, nothing happened. I caught a few fish, nothing spectacular. I drank my coffee, ate half a sandwich, and tried to convince myself that 3 days ago had been nothing but a coincidence and bad luck. Happens all the time on the water. Nets get torn, fish get away. The ocean's not a gentle place. Then, around 1 o'clock, I felt it again. But this time, it was different. This time, it was close. The vibration started in the water like before, but faster, more urgent. I stood up from where I was sitting, coffee forgotten in my lap. The nets I'd set were 300 yards out, anchored and waiting. But something was moving through the water toward them. I could see it, a disturbance at the surface, a wake moving fast, too fast for anything now. My hands went to the winch without me thinking about it. Instinct, a fisherman's instinct to pull in his nets when something's wrong. But before I could engage the motor, the line went taut, not gradually, all at once, like someone had grabbed it and yanked hard. The Margaret Ann lurched forward, almost throwing me off balance. The line was singing with tension, the winch straining. I'd never felt anything like it. In all my years, I'd never felt anything like it. "Come on, girl," I whispered to the boat, to the line, to whatever was on the other end of that net. "Come on." I worked the winch, straining against whatever was pulling back. The line was humming, vibrating, plucked string. And then I heard it, a sound from beneath not a whale song, not anything I'd ever heard before. It was a long, low moan, almost the sound of the wind through a tunnel, but wet, resonant. It made something in my chest vibrating. The line went slack suddenly, so quick that I stumbled back for a moment. Whatever was there had been free, but then I saw the net coming up through the water, and my blood went cold. It was moving on its own, not being pulled by the current or by the weight of fish inside it. The net was undulating, waving through the water like it was alive, like something inside it swimming, pushing against the mesh from the inside. I should have cut the line. Any reasonable man would have cut the line right there and let the whole thing drop back into the sea. But I didn't. I kept the winch going, kept pulling that impossible thing toward me. As the net got closer to the surface, I could see inside it. There were fish, yes, plenty of them, more fish than should have been in there. But mixed in with the fish was something else, something large, something that didn't belong. The net broke the surface, and I saw it. I've tried 100 times to describe it in a way that makes sense, but there aren't words for what I saw that day. The closest I can come is to say it was like if you took a fish, a big fish, maybe 6 feet long, and then broke every rule about what a fish should look like. It had scales, yes, but they were different colors, deep purple and black, shot through with veins of silver that pulsed like they were alive. Its mouth was too large, and when it opened that mouth, I saw rows of teeth that weren't sharp points, but more like small, translucent needles. But it was the eyes that got to me, the eyes that I still see sometimes when I'm falling asleep. They were intelligent, aware. They looked at me with something that felt like recognition, like the creature knew exactly who I was and why I was there. The fish in the net, the normal fish, were already dead or dying, crushed by the weight of the thing in there with them. But this creature, this impossible thing, it was still moving, still fighting, still trying to get out of the mesh. I stood frozen, the winch still humming, the net still half in the water, couldn't move. I couldn't think. I could only watch as the creature thrashed against the mesh, and as it did, the same gouges I'd seen on my first net started appearing in this one. Deep, deliberate gouges, ripping the mesh apart from the inside. And that sound again, that low, resonant moan, but this time louder, more desperate. In the next instant, something happened that I can't explain. The creature looked directly at me. I mean, directly, not at the boat, not at the net, but at me, standing there on the deck. And in that moment, I felt something. Not pain, not exactly, more like a pressure, a presence pushing into my mind. I heard a voice, not with my ears. I heard it inside my head. It wasn't words, not exactly. It was more like feelings, images, sensation. But if I had to translate it into language, I'd say it was saying, "Why? Why have you come back? Why won't you leave us alone?" I stumbled backward, my hand going to my head. When I looked again at the net, the creature had torn clean through the mesh. It was sliding back into the water, moving faster than anything that large should have been able to move. As it went under, I caught one more glimpse of those silver veins pulsing in its scales, and then it was gone. The net, what was left of it, came up empty except for dead fish. I didn't move for a long time after that. I just stood there, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The radio was still playing, something about a sale at a grocery store in Boston, like nothing had happened, like the world was still normal and whole. But it wasn't. I looked down at my hand. They were shaking. I looked at the torn net on my deck, the dead fish spilled across the boards, at the water where the creature disappeared, and I knew, with a certainty that went deeper than reason, that I had seen something that shouldn't exist, something that maybe's never meant to be seen. I started the engine. My hands worked without my telling them to, pulling up the remaining nets, securing what was left, pointing the Margaret Ann back toward home. The whole way back, I didn't see another boat, didn't see another soul. It was like the ocean had cleared itself just for me, whatever I'd brought up the depth. By the time I reached Provincetown, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. I tied up the boat on trembling legs. Tom was there, waiting to help me secure the lines like he always did. He took one look at my face and asked if I was okay. I told him I'd had a rough day. He didn't push. He knew better. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a glass of whiskey I didn't drink, and I thought about what I'd seen. I thought about the intelligence. I thought about the voice in my head, asking why I'd come back. And I realized something that scared me more than anything else had all day. It had recognized me. That creature, whatever it was, had known I'd been the one 3 days before. It remembered, which meant one thing for certain: I should never go back out there again. I didn't go back out on the water for 3 weeks after that. Martha didn't ask questions, which told me she understood something was wrong in a way that went beyond a bad catcher engine trouble. She'd been married to a fisherman long enough to know that sometimes the sea takes something from a man that can't be fixed with time or rest. She just held my hand in the evenings and didn't say much. I told myself I was done. That chapter was closed. I'd seen what I'd seen, and that was, I'd sell the Margaret Ann if I had to. There were younger men who wanted to fish, men who didn't carry the weight of impossible things in their memories. I could take a job on land. I could learn to live without the sound of the engine, the smell of salt. But I knew I was lying to myself. On the 21st day, I went back out. I didn't plan it, not really. I just found myself down at the dock before sunrise, untying the boat, starting the engine. Martha was still asleep when I left. I left a note on the kitchen table that said I'd be back at dark. I didn't say where I was going, but I think she knew. This time, I didn't set any net. I just motored out to that spot, the one I'd visited twice before, and I cut the engine and waited. The water was different that morning. The sun came up gray again, like it had on that first day, and the gulls were silent, but the water itself calm, almost peaceful, like it was waiting for, like it had known I'd come back. I waited until noon. No sign of anything, no disturbance, no vibration, no impossible creature clawing it in the deep. Just me and an empty ocean, the weight of unanswered questions. I sat there and I thought about what I'd seen. Those eyes, that voice in my head, that feeling of being recognized by something that should never have recognized anything human. Around 12:30, I heard it, not with my ears, with something deeper, that same pressure in my mind, that same sensation of presence. But this time, it wasn't violent or urgent. It was almost gentle, patient. The water beside the boat began to ripple, and then I saw it rising from the depths. Not the same creature, at least I didn't think it was. This one was smaller, maybe 4 feet long instead of 6. The scales were the same purple-black, with those silver veins pulsing through them, but the eyes were different, softer somehow, still intelligent, still aware, but not angry. It surfaced maybe 15 feet from the boat and just hung there in the water, looking at me. And then I heard it again, that voice, that presence in my mind. This time, the feeling was clearer. I understood it better, though I still can't put it into words the way you might want me to. But the creature, it was trying to tell me something. It was trying to explain. What I understood was this: they lived in the deep places where no light reached. They'd been there longer than men had been sailing on top of the water. They lived by rules that had nothing to do with the rules of the world above. They were peaceful in their own way, didn't want to hurt anyone, but they were curious, hungry for something that lived above the surface, and sometime curiosity and hunger led them to investigate things that didn't belong to them, like fishing nets. The creature that had torn through my nets, it hadn't been attacking me. It had been scared. It had been caught, trapped in mesh, suffocating in a space it didn't understand. The other creature, the smaller one now floating in front of me, trying to tell me that. It was trying to ask for forgiveness. I felt tears on my face, though I don't remember starting to cry. I reached out my hand toward the water, not making any sudden movements, just reaching. The creature didn't move away. It held, watching intelligent. Sorry, I said out. I didn't know. The creature made a low sound, not the desperate moan from before, but something almost musical. And then it sank back down into the water, disappearing into the depth. I watched the ripples spread out from where it had been until they were gone. I didn't see it again after that. I sat in the Margaret Ann, long, just drifting. The sun was high overhead by then, burning off the gray. The water had turned back its normal blue. Everything looked ordinary again, like nothing had happened, like I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. I started the engine and headed back to port. On the way, I made a decision. I wasn't going to tell anyone what I'd seen. Not Martha, not Tom, not anyone who'd listen, because who would believe me? I barely believed it myself. And more than that, I realized that some things, some knowledge, they're not meant to be. They're meant to be carried alone. That was 50 years ago now. I sold the Margaret Ann 5 years after that day, not because I was afraid, but because something had changed in me. That meeting out on the water, that communication, something that shouldn't. It had shown me that the world was bigger, stranger, and more mysterious than I'd ever imagined. The sea was no longer just a place to work. It was a place to live. I spent my remaining years as a fisherman, taking younger men out on boats, teaching them how to read the water, how to respect the ocean. I never told them about what I'd seen, but I think it changed the way I taught them. I made sure they understood that the sea wasn't something to conquer or exploit. It was something to live alongside, carefully and humbly. The scales I'd touched that first day, the ones that were still warm, I kept one in a jar in my kitchen for years. Eventually, it faded. The iridescence was gone, and it looked like nothing more than a regular fish scale. But I'd keep it anyway, just to know it was real. Martha died 8 years ago. Cancer. She went quickly, the way she lived, without complaining, without making a fuss. Before she died, I finally told her about what happened out on the water, the creature, about the voice in my head, about that day when I went back alone and made peace with something that shouldn't exist. She took my hand and she smiled. I always wondered what was eating at you, she said, but I knew it wasn't something you could fix with time or talking. I knew it was something you had to learn to live with. Do you think I imagined it? I asked. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, Earl, I think the ocean has a way of showing men exactly what they need to see. Whether it's real or imagined doesn't matter. What matters is what you do with it. I'm old now, 78 years old, sitting on my front porch with a view of the harbor. I don't go out on the water anymore. My bones ache, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. But sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up and I'll hear it, that low musical sound, small creature, and I'll know that somewhere out there, deep places, they remember me too. The sea taught me something that day, something I've carried with me every day since. The world is vast and mysterious, and most of what matters in life will never be fully explained. We spend so much time trying to understand everything, to make sense of every strange thing we encounter. But maybe the real wisdom is in accepting that some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. Some encounters are meant to change us quietly, without explanation or proof. The sea doesn't ask us to understand it. It only asks us to respect it. And if you're very lucky And if you listen carefully, it might just teach you something about yourself in the process. That's the lesson I learned out there on the water, 3 days at sea, and a creature that shouldn't have existed. Some truths don't need to be proven. They just need to be lived with. The greatest mysteries in life aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to humble us. We live in a vast world full of things we'll never understand, and that's not a failure. It's a reminder that there's always something bigger than us, always something that defies explanation. The wisdom isn't in conquering the unknown, it's in learning to coexist with it peacefully. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about the mysteries that surround us all, then please subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. Share Earl McKenna's tale with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know in the comments what mystery has the ocean or life itself taught you. I'd love to hear your story.